You're listening to Unapologetic, hosted by Eric King.
Welcome back. Unapologetic with Eric King. My brain just shot down right there because I was thinking about something. At any case, I would like to welcome the one, the only cultural commentator, sports broadcaster, all around woman about town. And as you know, on that fourth Wednesday of the month, we bring her in so that she can, be a part of what we're doing and give us the ins and out on Unapologetic. So without further ado, I would like to bring in media personality, sports journalist, and unapologetic voice of the people, Sister Hill. What's going on, Sister Hill? How you feeling today?
Hi, Eric. How are you?
I'm good. So let's do a quick rundown and just reset everything. So, as we do on the fourth Wednesday of the month, we talk about what's going on around Cleveland and nationally. And so, your points of view, because of what you do and how well you do it, provides us with the opportunity to do this. So, let's start off with the hands-off protest. So, as we know, since Trump came into office, there has been quite a bit of struggle with him and the administration. So when did you get the opportunity to participate in the hands-off protests that really was looking at policy and performance of the government? Did you get a chance to check that out?
I did not. I drove past one of the protests and I honked my horn and stuck my fist up to let them know that I was in solidarity with them.
Okay. Because most of what I heard was because of what's going on with Doge and what's going on with Elon Musk, all of these cuts are happening all at once, right? So I call it the Thanos approach. And anytime that we have the Thanos approach, somebody gonna get hit. Do you believe that this is more about, just creating chaos so that something else can go on? Or do you think this is really a policy, I guess, platform to just go and just cut through everything all at the same time without understanding, who you are affecting?
Somebody told me, and that was CNN commentator Van Jones, is that when they are creating a ruckus and creating controversy and drama, you always have to watch out for what's going on underneath that and what policies and procedures that they are trying to pass underneath all the drama. I never really paid attention that much to the government until Trump became president, and that's we saw it going in the direction that we didn't want it to go in. He killed over a million people during the pandemic, so the fact that he got reelected is just mind-boggling to me. People are still dying of COVID, not in the numbers that we saw when the pandemic first happened. But, people, it's still a disease still out here. And that's something that he didn't take very seriously at all. And then you got your anti-vaxxers that was encouraged by Trump. So, he just creates controversy and chaos. And then under the cloak of that, there's darkness going on. So I just, a lot of us we don't know what to say. We don't know what to do because the fact that he got elected a second time. And, they talked about Project 2025. In Project 2025, they told us exactly what they are going to do. But yet we continue to be surprised by this every day. And people knew what Project 2025 was, and they voted for it because they knew it was going to hurt certain people. But now people are finding out that slowly but surely that circle is closing in on them and they're being affected as well.
Yeah. The interesting part is at one point we had eradicated measles. And so in the state of Ohio, we've seen, I think we're up to five cases, and I think 1 or 2 deaths. And I apologize if I don't actually know. When you were talking about the anti-vaccine, that's the thing that kept coming back around for me. we got all this stuff going on with Elon, and we got all this cuts going on, but no one is paying attention to how it is affecting. We got Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Talking about he will eradicate or have an answer to autism, but we're not looking at cancer. We're also not looking at this concept of a lot of the childhood ailments that were eradicated when we were children are coming back around. When you look at even what Ohio is doing, do you think that Ohio, which I thought at one point, the governor was a level-headed individual, do you think Ohio is following what the nation is doing as it relates to what's going on with the distractions and passing stuff or focusing on DEI and the stuff that is going on? Do you think the governor is falling behind that too, when at one point he was above it?
Yeah, he did an excellent job during COVID, I will admit, but after COVID, it's just been a series of cruelty is the point after COVID. So, it was funny because at Ohio State, I used to work at the Schottenstein Center when it first opened. And the governor was coming to the game, and it was like, well, don't speak to him. And, he doesn't speak to you and all these other rules. And I'm like, I don't even know who the governor is. I was a college student at the time, and it was Bob Taft. And I'm like, I don't even know what he looks like. So, Ohio has been inept, in its leadership. And, as we move into the next governor race, I thought that I could, tolerate Jim Trussell, but he was one of the smiling people when they struck down DEI and tried to tell schools what to do. So I don't think that we put any focus on these diseases that are coming back that could kill people.
Okay.
We're not putting any focus on that. All the focus is going into DEI, telling teachers what they can teach and all that other stuff. They can't go on strike. And he was one of the smiling faces. So I will be voting for Amy Acton. She seems to be the Democratic candidate that's put forth. Vivek Swamy is running for governor too. And unfortunately, this is a red state. So hopefully people can turn back their memory clocks to how Amy Acton tried to keep us alive.
Yeah, I was going to say that part. She was the one in Ohio that was doing just, an amazing job of ensuring that, less people passed away from COVID. And she had her house, targeted, and when, she came out and all that stuff. When you talk about the school board, so anytime that I'm looking at politics, I'm looking at the school board and I'm looking at how the school board works. I've known, and I say this quite often, I grew up in Bedford. Our streets were always clear, which means we always went to school. And to me, that was weird, right? And then years later, we found out that there was some corruption with the mayor at the time. With that said, it has always been my understanding that if you want anything to happen, always start with the school board. And right now in Ohio, there are at least two schools in Ohio, Cleveland Heights as well as Shaker Heights, that are pushing back on the DEI, pushback. What is the word on the street as it relates to what Cleveland Heights as well as Shaker Heights is doing, in more or less doing what Harvard is doing from a larger scale and saying, we're okay, we're good. We're going to keep doing exactly what we've been doing for decades to promote and to help our students. What are you hearing on that front?
Yeah, Shaker prides itself in its diversity. In the 1960s, when integration started to happen, Shaker purposely did not have the white flight. They wanted to integrate. They wanted to change things. They wanted Black people in their community. So same thing with Cleveland Heights, but Shaker made national news for that. And a lot of articles were written about that. So Shaker is not surprising to me that they would act in that manner because it prides itself, when I was at school, when I was at Shaker, it was about 70-30, 70% white, 30% Black. and those numbers of Black people have increased. So Shaker, don't play that. They want all students to feel welcome. They want to teach academics correctly. You can try to whitewash them all you want, but it doesn't change what happened. And people are going to find out, and they're going to know. So, I'm just sick of it. It's another buzzword when you look at, DEI, and then you look at the other terms that have been woke. These things are hijacked. And, whenever there's Black progress made when it comes to racial stuff, you look at, George Floyd and all those protests. What do we have come out of that? Woke, DEI, CRT. You have the white
critical race theory, right?
Yes. You have the white backlash to it. It's always been there throughout history.
Yeah.
So these are the backlashes as well. To also having a Black president too.
Yeah.
So we're still paying for that years later. And it's just at times you're left speechless because every day you turn on the news, I start watching the news, but every day you turn on the news, every day is something different.
Yeah.
He did something crazy. He's trying to pass some crazy law. But, he's not, they're working on DEI stuff, but they're not working on what's going to help the people, lower gas prices, lower food, prices. But those things never get lower. They always get higher. And those are the things that, we have to live with, this inflation and stuff. So, it's sad when the National Football League has to end racism on their field because the president is coming. So to me, he ain't nothing but another Bull Connor. He just ain't said segregation today, tomorrow, or forever.
And the odd part about it, I'm not sure if you pay attention to the TV show Real Time with Bill Maher. So I watched Bill Maher. Bill Maher is a comedian who has a weekly radio station. A weekly TV show on, I think it's HBO, something to that effect. He went recently. So he's a staunch liberal, right? So he went recently to go sit down and talk with, President Trump. And so what came back from that, if, just to paraphrase, is the person that you see is not the person that he is. And for the most part, what he stated was this individual is acting, he's playing the part. I got two questions for that. One, if an individual is acting, playing the part, he's not actually realizing the amount of lives that he is negatively affecting. So that's one. And secondly, I have a real problem with an individual who is one way, out in public, who is the most powerful person, on the earth. And then back, when doors are closed, he's, I guess, more or less, apologetic about the things that he do. I haven't met a lot of politicians. I'm assuming you have. Is this something normal with politicians to where they're saying this thing and they're acting and they're playing this part, but in the end, they're not actually understanding the price of their actions and how it's affecting real people? You know more famous people than I do. And so I just wanted to ask that before we jump into that. I just wanted to ask that, that concept of, is this normal?
Some of the politicians that you meet are rude, and they think that you're not on their level, so they don't have to speak to you even when they interrupt the conversation you're having. Some of them are fake, absolutely, and some of them are real. But the thing is, you're the president of the United States, like. 330 million people live in this country that you're affecting.
Yep.
The fact that you would sit up there and say you're going to deport U.S. citizens who are born here to El Salvador is like just mind-boggling.
Not just that. Not just that. It's also people who are born here that have said things, or who are naturalized citizens that have said things that he doesn't like, that he wants to get rid of. And that's the part to where if you go and watch that episode, he says he questions him about that. And I believe that he was unabashed about it, right? He questioned him about that, and he said that Trump just looked at him and said, threw his hands up.
Well, you know what? I said during the last presidency that Mitch McConnell was the president.
Yeah.
Trump is just a figurehead, and
Mhm.
they have him sign all these executive orders.
Right.
He don't know what's going on.
Right.
He don't care. They said when he was president, the military or the briefings, like they would put it down on a note card
Mhm.
because he wouldn't read the whole briefing. So they would put the most important things about the briefing on a note card because he couldn't be bothered to read it.
Yeah.
So Mitch McConnell got all those judges through, all those laws passed and stuff like that. So he was the president the last time. This time, I'm not exactly sure who it is just yet. Well, I guess you could say Mike Johnson,
Mhm.
Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson.
Mhm.
But he don't know what he doing. He don't know what he's signing. He don't care. He just want to play golf all day and wants to be labeled the most powerful man on earth. That's all. That's all he care about.
I think
He don't care about the people.
I think it has more about the concept of power. So what I've always noticed about powerful people or people with access, it's not necessary. It's not about money. It's not even about anything specifically tangible that they're getting. It's the fact of they have the power over people. And that's what it seemed like the first time, and that's what it seemed like now. It's not about doing anything. It's not about change. It's not about affecting or even being doing something positive. It's literally about I have the power and you can't talk trash about me. That's what it seemed like to me. But let's move on a little bit. So a couple women went up into space. And so we're seeing not only more Black women up in space, right? So Gayle King went up in space recently, but we're also seeing an influx in Black women in the media as well as Black women podcasts. We're seeing an influx in Black women wanting to get their voices out. I will say this. When you look at what's going on in America, above all, Black women has always said, pay attention to what's going on behind the curtain, not in front of the curtain. When you see this renaissance, as a Black woman, do you ever get tired of perpetually saving the world?
No, when you look on, Black women have something to say and our voices are silenced. We're the most unprotected species on earth. And we have things to say. So, I think that, podcasts are great, those that, are small and those that have a great audience. But, women are always second class citizens.
Mm-hmm.
And black women even more.
Mm-hmm.
So I encourage and congratulate those that have been able to get out there and have their voices heard. So I think it's a great renaissance because if we're putting our voices out there, that will eventually translate into public speeches and people, ascending and being known for something. And those that are political, you never know what aspirations they have to get out there and be politicians. So it's all about, having your voice heard, gaining popularity. And, there are people who can change the world. They just haven't had opportunity to do it.
Yeah. The idea that, Black women have perpetually throughout, existence in America, have been the voice to say, hey, pay attention what's going on, focus on what's going on. And still at this current, sector, more Black women, more Black women are in college than are Black males, right? So we had last week, that was our show. We looked at, the article that recently came out about in HBCUs where there are more Black men. More Black women and non-Black individuals at HBCUs than there are Black men. And so I like to say that this narrative is made up, but it is coming around far too often. And the only thing that I can that keeps ringing in my ear is, how how long we gonna keep playing this game to where us as men, and I'm talking to men, us as men continue to look at our, female counterpart as, below us rather than someone who is fighting with us. I'm not sure if if you got 2 cents on this, but I would love to hear your thought process on the concept that, there's more Black women at HBCUs and non-Black individuals than there are Black men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, first of all, divide and conquer.
Okay.
You divide people on education.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the things is we have to be cognizant, and we are cognizant that, 80% of Black families do not have a father as a figurehead.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know that, when there's a father in the home,
Mm-hmm.
that a child has a higher success rate.
Right.
So, if we don't have fathers in the home, then our success rate is going to fall. But with those numbers at HBCUs, I'm hoping that they're at PWIs.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what a PWI was until I became a Delta. I'd never heard that term in my life.
Predominantly white institution, got you.
Yeah.
Which is the counterpart of
that?
HBCUs.
I was like, I never heard of that in my life. What's that?
Right.
So I'm hoping that they're at PWIs because, HBCUs are often hard to get into as well. So, there are other colleges or community colleges and stuff like that. So, I don't know, if they, I feel like they should expand that study as well too. So I'm hoping that there's some education there. But yeah, I mean, white people get mad saying, well, they got black colleges and stuff. Well, those were created because we weren't allowed access to your college. And then, now you attend them as well.
Right.
Because you realize that they're great schools.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a benefit and value there and they don't discriminate.
Right.
Then now you're trying to, and then what these supposedly DEI laws could affect HBCUs too.
Right. Right.
So we have to think about that. But, it all begins with the mentality in school being pushed, and that needs to be in our community as a whole.
Right.
Education gives you the opportunity to succeed. So we have to do better as a community with pushing, higher education, because that gives you the opportunity to make more money over your lifetime.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there's anything wrong with blue collar jobs or anything like that in the trades, because you can make 6 figures in trades.
Amen. You got that right.
And white people push that a lot too amongst their own. So everybody's not made for college. Everybody's not cut out for it.
Right.
But as a community overall, we need to push it.
Yeah, so last week when we were talking, I brought on Charmaine L. Britton. He's a Morehouse graduate, right? So we talked about that, but we also talked about that not everyone is, college made, and it's not about money, right? It's literally about what's your trajectory in life, and not everybody, is made out for college. Not everybody is made to go to college, and I think, the narrative needs to be addressed a little bit more, because you're correct. In non-Black communities, there are individuals pushing trade schools or plumbing schools or HVAC schools, rather than, going and doing, some type of higher education where they may or may not, make the money back that they use, to get the degree. So let's go on to the next story. The next story is, since we were talking about PWI, is the Florida State University shooting. Did you hear about that?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. The odd part about it is that you had a police officer whose son got the police officer's gun and went and proceeded to harm others. For what reason? As a mental health provider, I have an issue with the very first thing that anyone says is, oh, that person has mental health struggles. When I heard the story, I didn't hear, because I'm listening from my ears. I didn't hear mental health struggle. What I heard was a life struggle, and this individual doesn't have a way of dealing with life struggle. That's not mental health. That's not mental health. That's just this individual didn't have, a way of dealing with life. What was your thoughts on that?
Well, mental health is only reserved for white people, so that's always the first
Oh,
thing.
when something bad happened, you mean?
Yeah,
Okay.
when it's issues, always mental health issues for them. But Black people are not given that grace. But I was reading that there was a Parkland student who was involved, who went to school there.
Mhm.
So, she's been through two
Twice.
school shootings. And it's happened, more than once too, with all these school shootings, people being involved in too, which is just crazy to me. But it's just sad. And, instead of doing something about gun control, which they never will,
Right.
they, invent stuff like DEI and stuff like that, as opposed to handling the real issues. But everybody should not have a gun. It's just that simple.
It's just that simple. Not everybody need to have a gun.
Exactly.
That's just me. I mean, once again, am I a gun avid? Yes, I am, because I have one. Do I believe that everyone needs to have one because we're entitled to? Absolutely not. That's not how I view it. And so my struggle is, once again, as the mental health provider, is every time something like this happens, first thing I hear is thoughts and prayers. So that's first. The second thing I hear right after that, after thoughts and prayers, they go directly into mental health and violent video games. That's not how it works, people. And please, if you could, find a different narrative to explain why a nut or an idiot decides to take something into his hands because they struggle to deal with life. Please stop. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my 2 cents.
And we're always going through this. This is nothing new. This is a revolving cycle. One time, Trump said there's been no school shootings. Well, they were on summer break, idiot.
Right.
So, just that person just I don't even want to mention him anymore.
All right. Let's take a quick break, and we gonna stop there. But no, I mean, that was my 2 cents. I really would like people just to stop with this whole narrative of mental health and this and that. We're gonna take a quick break, and on the other side, we're gonna do a quick wrap up, and then from that wrap up, we're gonna jump into what's going on with sports. Are you ready? You prepared for that?
Yes.
You sure? Because I got my son.
I got my the ball game right now.
Are you? What time does it start? 1 o'clock? Does it start at 1 o'clock?
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So my son is here. He's out of school. He attends Benny, and he wants the Browns to get Cam Ward. And I keep telling him it ain't gonna happen. But we're gonna take a quick break, and on the other side we're gonna do a quick recap, and then we're going to talk a little bit about sports. So this is Unapologetic on WOVU 95.9 FM.